Welcome back to New Money. This evening we're discussing healthcare. My guest is Clayton Samsudeen. And if you'd like to email me, my email address is info@anchorcapital.co.za. So now I'm going to move straight on to the emails. Vincent in Hout Bay says, Discovery Health indicator will be another increase in April 2023. Do you know what this increase will be? And can members change their options at any time?
Yeah, so Discovery indicated towards the end of last year that we can kind of estimate an increase of CPI plus 3 or 4%. So as you know, CPI has been volatile, so it really depends on what that is that would determine what the increase is. And because of the increases, members would be allowed to change options by the 1st of March.
Clayton, CPI plus 3?
Or 4.
I mean, you're talking about CPI at the moment, 7.2%.
Yeah.
When do you think we're going to hear more?
I'd say by 22nd February, somewhere around there, towards the end of Feb. Yeah.
I've just got to interrupt our program because I do have an apology to make. When Harry Joffe was on the show, we were talking about estate planning. We were talking about, and I'm sorry to have done this, but I promise to come back to viewers. We were talking about what happened when you took amnesty in 2002 and whether the amnesty it was part of your South African estate or whether you paid tax on capital gains or interest. Well, we made the comment that your assets offshore were not, if you took that amnesty, not the second or the third amnesty, if you took the first one, that those assets are not part of your estate. However, any interest or anything earned, any capital gains tax, you have accepted with that amnesty to include that in your local tax returns on a yearly basis. And as you know, this is the month that we do all our calculations. So I'm sorry to have interrupted you. Clayton, Diana in Durban says, what are the differences between medical schemes and medical insurance cover? Is there a difference?
Yeah, fundamental difference. So as I mentioned previously, so medical schemes have to provide firstly for prescribed minimum benefits, whereas medical insurance, or otherwise now known as primary health care, is not required. They're exempt from providing prescribed minimum benefits. It's almost the other way around. With medical schemes, you must have a hospital cover and you can elect to have day-to-day or not. On the medical insurance or primary health care side, you would typically select either accident or stabilization hospital cover and either day-to-day or combine the two. So we find most people are looking at mainly the access in terms of day-to-day cover on the medical insurance side. So that's mainly the differences. One needs to understand that, and I find many people land on a medical insurance plan or primary health care plan thinking that it is a medical scheme. And so regulation passes subsequently to where those providers must clearly state in the benefit guide that it's not a medical aid.
Darryl in Cape Town says, medical schemes do not provide full cover, hence we recommend gap cover. Does gap cover only provide cover for in-hospital procedures? I think in the main it does, doesn't it? But there are some peripheral covers.
Correct, yeah. So the majority of them do, but again, it's like same like with medical scheme options. You have a core option and you can go right up to a comprehensive option. So the comprehensive options would offer co-payment cover for, let's say, MRIs out of hospital. They'll offer a portion of cover, gap cover for GP consults and specialists out of hospital. There's the cancer co-pays. There's emergency ward cover. So if you've admitted at a hospital and it's after hours and it's for illness or accident, you'll have cover for that. So there's plus another, 70-odd procedures that takes place within a doctor's surgery or practitioner surgery that will be covered by gap cover. So you really have to be smart about your choices on gap cover too. It's not a matter of just taking a gap cover plan. It has to complement your medical scheme, and that's why the needs analysis has to be done together.
And how does the premium vary between the lower gap cover and the higher? I mean, medical aids, we can talk about comprehensive, a family of two, somewhere 15,000 Rand. Where does the gap cover vary between? So I know it's a difficult one to call, but a couple of hundred to a couple of thousand?
No. So firstly, there's a number of ways that these are rated dependent on the providers. So some would rate it as a family, some would segment it between individuals and family, and others would do exactly that, but also rate it further between age. So at the minimum, you could probably, as an individual, pay something around 145 Rand and up. to around 788 Rand on the highest age and the highest family. So that's about the range that we're looking at. So I'd say just under 200 to just under 800 Rand.
Clayton, I need to make the point that I've always said, it doesn't replace a medical aid. But let's just talk about gap cover. You spoke about some medical aids offering 100%, 200%, 300% hospitalisation. And some, we know that some of the surgeons and some of the healthcare specialists are charging 500 to 600. Where does gap actually play a role in terms of bridging the gap?
Right, so let's just say you're on a medical scheme that reimburses at 100% of the medical scheme rate for an in-hospital treatment. And your gap cover reimburses, let's say, up to 500%. So what that means is that that 300% difference that the health practitioners charged will be covered from your gap cover. Now, interestingly enough, you could have a gap 3 times. So meaning, you could have a gap when the rates are different, you could have a co-payment because of the procedure that you're having, and you could have another co-payment because of a deductible that's applied to a sublimit. So simply put, there's the rates that differ, there's the co-payments for certain procedures, and certain, like internally implanted prostheses have a sublimit. So you could have a shortfall 3 occasions with 1 operation.
And Clayton, how do claims actually work? I mean, it's not like, you know, separate to medical aid, dreaded disease will always pay out.
Yeah.
Does gap cover pay out based on the actual invoice you received from the hospital or the doctor?
Yeah, so again, we go down to the broker, and ideally, the medical scheme broker and the gap cover broker should be the same consultancy. Alternatively, if it's a gap cover, broker should have a third-party consent on your medical scheme, and this is the reason why. So how it works is that we need to obtain the claims transaction history from the medical scheme. So the medical scheme says we received this claim, and based on this we paid X, and there's Y that the member has to pay. The Y that the member has to pay is the proof of payment and the receipt that we require, and we need those 2 plus the claim statement from the provider itself. So you can imagine, here you have a member that's gone through, you know, whatever the procedure may be, and someone has got to do this running around between getting the proof of payment, the claims transaction history, and the claim statement from the provider. Only then can you lodge the claim. If all of those are done from time of receipt, again dependent on efficiency, anything from 5 to 10 days to have it reimbursed to the member. So the provider doesn't get paid, the member gets reimbursed.
Clayton, medical aids are geared to pay claims quickly.
Yeah.
Are gap covers got these systems in place where they're geared to pay up claims quickly?
Yeah, so it depends again. So we have certain gap covers that run alongside the medical scheme. So when those claims run through the medical scheme's admin system, it runs through the gap cover system at the same time. And that eliminates what I've just explained. But if it's not that case, then it means there is a lot more to do. But again, we've seen this advancement because of COVID. So many of these providers allow the broker to lodge this claim on their portal. And by doing that, doing it digitally, electronically, it really speeds up the process.
Tony in Centurion says, if you don't change your medical scheme or option, what are the important aspects to consider and to communicate with the scheme? So let's just talk about an executive summary. I'm thinking of changing my scheme. Give me 5 important considerations one needs.
So the first thing is that if you're not going to change your option, it's important to, I think where the biggest mistake comes with many people is what's called the income verification on capitation options. So people for the month of January land up paying double or a little bit more than what they did before, simply because they didn't complete the income verification. So that means it's on medical schemes that are income based. That's the first thing that is significant. The other is the amount that is being transferred from the medical scheme to the member in terms of co-payments or reduced benefits, put it this way. So you'll find that co-payments, deductibles, sublimits increase by sometimes a higher percentage than the medical scheme increase or inflation. So that means you're technically going to pay more for your benefits out of your pocket and put together with your medical scheme premium. So that's the other thing that you need to look at. The other 2 important considerations, and these are really vital, is the changes to the chronic medication formulary. So not all medicines will apply from one year to the next. So you need to look at the chronic medication formulary. Is your medicine still covered, or is there a new medication you need to speak to a specialist about? And again, those that are on capitation options is that the hospital networks change from time to time. So you may find that a hospital network is not present in the next financial year that you probably would have wanted to go to.
Well, Craig in Birdhaven says, I'm puzzled as I have my gap cover with my medical aid. I recently had an event in the USA and the medical aid has repudiated the claim on the grounds of a pre-existing condition. Surely the medical aid and gap cover correlate with each other. Is this not correct?
No, it's not correct.
They don't?
No, they don't. So they're totally separate entities, unless, as I mentioned earlier, is where the medical scheme and gap cover run alongside each other.
Well, then let me just go to one more email from Paul in Bishop's Court. Says, where do medical aid and call centres get their medical knowledge in deciding to be so prescriptive with regard to recommended treatment by doctors?
So medical schemes have healthcare practitioners, doctors in the employ. And so what I mentioned earlier about the formulary, the treatment protocol, the clinical protocols are determined by these health professions, and that is kind of handed over to these call center agents that would typically tell you what you qualify for or not. So it's not actually them, it comes up from higher above within the scheme that determines what the treatment protocol is.
And if you're not getting service from a call centre, you can always escalate it. Can you ask that call centre person to escalate the inquiry?
Yeah.
Obviously, it makes a lot of sense to have a broker.
Correct.
As I've always said, you know, Clayton happens to be my broker. I appointed him last year, and I must tell you, I've had a lot of easy positions with him over the last year. It's easy to point fingers, but with the cost of medical aid escalating and the advancement of medical technology, it's critical that members understand more about their scheme and, more important, what they're paying for. Clayton, I'd like to thank you for joining me this evening. It's important to note that our program is to provide information and should not be construed as advice. Next week's program will be focusing on the short-term insurance industry, and if you need to get hold of me, my details will appear on the screen. I'd like to thank you for watching, and good night.